For the interim, today I'm pretty excited about this one. So Michelle, I taught with Michelle in the middle school, and one of the things that you hear a lot about in schools these days is personalized learning. Because the notion is if a kid can learn on the computer, they can learn it completely at their own pace. So then what's the point of schools? Michelle was, I would say, the best person at the middle school at individualizing and personalizing learning. Kids were totally on their own, at their own pace, and we're doing different types of things. I mean, it was differentiation. It was a case study in differentiation. She was doing a lot of that with some tech stuff, and tech enabled her, I think, to do a lot of that. Buck is the tech integrationist up at the middle school, but I think he's getting pulled for upper school stuff on occasion too, and lower school stuff. The model for the last 15 years, I think, maybe has been to have a tech class. That's going away, because the notion is that we need to integrate tech into everything we're doing. So I'm having conversations with Becky right now about this. We've got a conversation next week about it. But Buck is sort of the integrationist. So there is no tech class, if I'm right.
There is.
There is, never mind. So, but the notion is that you apply skills in a context, in a class context. And sort of that's where things are going. And so he's doing a lot of neat stuff. And they're going to talk to you all about robotics, which let them go.
Good morning. It's nice to see you all. I apologize if I'm back and forth between this and that to flip slides, but it'll be okay. Just going to share with you some information about tech in the upper school to place our robotics program in context, and then talk about the two main components of it. We have a competitive robotics program, and then we have robotics in the 8th grade science curriculum, so I'll share that with you. And then also, equally, time permitting, get you a little hands-on time with our robots. These are actually robots that students have built and are continuing to tweak in preparation for competition. So this is the product of work of 5th and 6th graders at St. Andrews. And maybe we get you a little time writing a basic program and watching the robots run. So first, just to give you a sense of digital technology opportunities on the North Campus. We have Chromebooks in all of our 5th grade classes this year, thanks to the generosity of the annual fund. And those aren't full-fledged Windows machines. They're high-powered web browsers, but a lot of what our teachers do is cloud-based computing. So it's been very helpful this year. We've seen laptop use, particularly in the 5th grade classes, jump up this year as a result to easier access. We do have Windows laptops parts available for all grade levels in the middle school, but we're hopefully moving away from that towards one-to-one, where each student would have his or her own device, and those devices would be tiered so that older students have access to sort of more sophisticated machines. 5th grade science, I taught that for the last 2 years, and we had a quarter of programming using MIT's Scratch language. And this year I'm in negotiations with Michelle Schaefer regarding continuing that work. Michelle was the STEM teacher here in the 4th grade and moved up to the middle school and is such an asset to the middle school faculty, so we're going to try to see if we can continue to make that offering. 6th grade, we do have a quarter-long digital technology class, and I'm teaching that this year. It's part digital citizenship, it's part programming, it was first quarter part robotics. So I'm tinkering with that course as the year progresses, so some things are essential, but some things change quarter to quarter. 8th grade science we'll hear more about. Across the 8th grade, the use of laptops is heavy. We've got an 8th grade faculty that is really pushing the middle school in terms of laptop use, digital technology use. And so you'll hear more about robotics and 8th grade science. Then we have this year, four first LEGO robotics teams. And after robotics finishes, very likely in December, next semester we'll have an afternoon activity, just a maker's workshop, which will be in the tech space where I work now. So first LEGO Robotics is our competitive robotics program. And Michelle started that work, I'm going to say 5 years ago. The program was founded, I think, by the inventor, Dean Kamen, And it's got a number of tiers. We're at the middle tier, I would say. So there's an elementary level competitive program. There's the first Lego, which is our level program. And then there's the first Tech Challenge, which is something that we'll talk about in just a bit that we're hoping to develop in the upper school over the next few years. But this year we've got 4 teams. The maximum size for a team is 10 students. We've got approximately 30 students. The way those teams shake out is there are 3 5th and 6th grade teams right now, and 1 7th and 8th grade team. There's some attrition between 5th and 6th because of football. So there was a bigger interest in 6th grade this year with football, so we lost some robotics folks. We experimented with having practices during the school day, but it doesn't really work. You need more than 20 minutes to do productive work. But we've got a good group of enthusiastic students who are getting ready for our competition, which is November 15th. The competition has 4 parts, so you're evaluated on 4 things. The robot game, a project, the design of your robot, and how your group works together fulfilling what they call the core values, and we'll talk about those. There are a number of regional qualifiers around the state. We've chosen to go to the Oxford qualifier this year. We've gone, Vicksburg, Hattiesburg. Regional qualifiers just started last year. It's a smaller event. Anyway, the top teams from regional qualifiers advanced to the state competition. Last year we had 3 teams. 2 of our 3 teams advanced. One of our 3 teams, the 8th grade team last year, actually won the Champions Award for our regional qualifier in Vicksburg. So that's the progression. If you win the state championship, then you're eligible to go to the world competition, which last year was in St. Louis, but we haven't yet won the state championship. So the timeline on all this, usually we start in August, shortly after the school year begins, and things begin to settle out. And like I said, regional qualifiers are in November, and then December is when the state championship is. Last year there was a government shutdown, and this is in part funded in Mississippi through NASA's Stennis Space Center, so we actually had an entire year. The regional qualifier didn't happen until December, and state didn't happen until March. But the typical timeline, we're wrapped up by the end of first semester. So this year's competition, FLL is First Lego League. The theme is world class. Every year there's a theme for the competition. Last year's had to do with disasters. It was called Nature's Fury. There's been one called Senior Solutions, which was about helping our elderly friends solve problems that they live with day to day. There was Body Forward, and there was a food one as well. I'm forgetting the name of it.
Food Factor.
Food Factor. So the theme plays into the project component as well as the field that the robot game takes place on. I'm going to show you a clip from the video, the introductory video for the robot game, so you can get a sense of what the robot game looks like. You can also come to either one of our classrooms anytime you want, and there are 2 set up in Michelle's classroom and 1 set up in mine. But they're basically large wood platforms on which we lay out a plastic design and a plastic template, and then attached to that are various Lego piece built challenges, which the students then, the robot game, the idea is program the robot and attach things to the robot that allow the robot to accomplish the various challenges, which all have point values. You have 2.5 minutes to do it. You get two runs, and they take your best score. So that's half of the competition day. And in years past, we've struggled, I would say, to get lots of people hands-on time with the robots in preparation for competition, because some of it is just the way kids associate with one another. Some of it is we had robots that were being used for 8th grade science, and then we had a few competition robots. In the last year, we've actually upgraded all of the 8th grade class robots to this. This is the newest generation, and it's really the brain is the part that we're worried about, and the motors as well. But we inherited then the old 8th grade robots, which means we have a lot more robots for kids to get their hands on in the context of practice. So let me show you real quick, just so you can get a flavor of what the robot game looks like, a video. The audio is not super important. but the chance to see what a field looks like and what some of the challenges look like is.
To the 2014 robot game, Opening Doors. When pictures and words are sufficient tools for learning, the classroom will always make sense. But when actual people, places, and things and activities be better, it's time to get out of the classroom and make the world your class. For this mission, the robot needs to push the lever down and open up the door some obvious amount. Cloud access. Unthinkable volumes of knowledge exist on the internet cloud, but you need to continually master each new technology required to access it. We've seen desktops, laptops, tablets, and phones so far, but what's the next key? For this mission, you need to understand how the cloud model works and design a key for it. Then it's the robot's job to precisely insert the key, which will cause the SD card to rise. Community learning. Out in your community, from everyone you meet, everything you see, and everything you try, you take away some knowledge or skill, often without even knowing it. With this in mind, start to seek life's lessons and pay attention. Instead of learning things passively or by accident, you can shape your learning any way you like. For this mission, the robot needs to completely remove the knowledge and skill loop from the community tree. Robotics competition. Robotics programs like FLL are a wonderful way to learn complex lessons, yes, about technology, but other fields, such as sociology and project management, while actually having fun. For this mission, the robot needs to place the robotics insert into the robotic arm to release and completely remove the knowledge and skill loop.
All right, so those are some of the challenges on the field, and you can see they vary in terms of difficulty. But you've got to, or the students got to, program the robot from something called base, which is the only place on the field where they're allowed to touch the robot. They've got to program it to move from there to the challenge and then do whatever it takes to get the points for the challenge. So that involves some pretty complex planning. It involves whatever calculations you need to make to get the robot from a spot out to a specific location and have it oriented in a particular way. It also involves designing and making some sort of attachment work. So any of those are going to involve either grabbing something or they're going to involve placing something. And so that's also, you've got to design an attachment, and then you've got to attach that attachment to a motor so that it'll actually move. Because once the robot is out of base, you're not allowed to touch it without a penalty. So the robot becomes autonomous as soon as you start the program, and is expected to go out, do the thing that you need to do to get the points, and then come back to you so that if you need to make any changes or launch another program, you can. Back to the slides. That's the robot game, and like I said, that's half of our competition day. And I would say that's also the bulk of the work that we do in preparation for competition, is getting fifth graders and new students to the program oriented with the programming environment, getting them thinking about how can we design the robot other than there's a stock design that comes with the instructions for the kit. But again, one of the components in the competition is the design of your robot. So there's an incentive in competition for a creatively designed robot. And if you're at all interested, if you just go to YouTube and type in FLL robot, you can see other teams' runs and other teams' designs. There's some amazing work that's done. And I always encourage the students to look at this too. There are robots that roll out and then open a door and then release a mini robot that then goes out and does something. I mean, they're phenomenal designs because there are some groups that are spending the entire year working on just the design piece, not only for this competition. The second piece that we spend a lot of our time on in preparation for competition is a project, and because this year's theme is world class, the project is centered around a question related to learning. This is exciting because it gets our students thinking about what's going on in all of their classes and how those classes are conducted and getting them thinking about their own learning. So right now we've got one team, one 5th and 6th grade team that is investigating, they've identified the problem of learning foreign languages. And so their question right now, and we're going to hopefully work with them to refine it, is how can we help people learn foreign languages more easily? My first suggestion for them was, okay, don't worry about going to the literature or anything, We've got a lot of experts here on the North Campus. Set up a time to talk with any number of our language faculty, and I've already warned a number of the language faculty. Small people are going to become approaching you. Be prepared. We may want to monopolize your time. So they've identified a problem. They're in the midst of doing research on it. On the basis of that research, they then devise some sort of a solution. And then they share that solution not only at competition with the judges, but they also, you get points for in competition, sharing what you learned with either other teams or other groups. And so I'm interested particularly with this group that's doing the foreign language question, with getting the World Languages Department together and having them present what they've learned and their problem and solution. But they can also, last year we had a group of students researching, was it rescue after a disaster? They designed a quadricopter, or built a quadricopter, and were arguing that drones would be useful for finding people trapped under debris. They actually reached out, I think, and contacted a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and then at competition presented their work as a skit about a disaster, which it was exciting because one of the students plays in the band, he played the flute, providing music for the skit. And they brought in an actual, one of those sphere-flying helicopter things. It was great. That was the 8th grade team that won the region. But that's the project piece. So it's not all about building the robot getting the aid. It also ties into some broader issue and gets students doing project management and research around some compelling topic. These are the core values that First LEGO League asks the students to subscribe to when they participate in the program. And part of their competition judging is how well as a team they A, understand these core values, and B, enact them in their work with one another. Usually at competition what that looks like is it looks like a session with judges where the judges give them a novel problem and a short amount of time to solve that problem together. And then the judges observe not only how they solve the problem, but how well they're collaborating in that solution. And we do that well sometimes, and sometimes we don't do it so well. I will say that we attract in the robotics program sometimes students who are high flyers, and that's an asset in terms of final products, but it's difficult in the process getting students who feel most comfortable working by themselves because they've been flying forward ahead of their classmates in a lot of their classes. But that's why this program is useful, is because it provides a context for them to have to learn how to be with other people and do productive work. One of the things that I really appreciate is coopertition. It's cooperation. The first time I saw it, I was like, what? The idea is that you're not competing against other teams per se, you're competing against the field. And so if in the context of competition you see that another team is struggling, you're encouraged to step over and help the other team out. I try to emphasize this with our students. What we discover is more important than what we win. This is a hard piece for people to get. Like, yes, they assign points and we go and we place, and if we place high, we get to advance. But really, the process is where you're gaining the most benefit. We learn the most about playing basketball in basketball practice. The games are nice, it feels really good, but it's the gut work getting ready for that, which is where you're getting your head around whatever it is you're going to compete in. So it's process over product. This is the second opportunity for robotics in middle school. Do you want to speak to it, or do you want to?
You can go ahead, and
okay.
then I can just give a couple of
All right.
things if you want.
Michelle runs this in her class and basically sets up the field for the year, 2 of the fields for the year, and gets the students an introduction to programming if they haven't already participated in the program. It happens, it straddles first and second quarter, and then it comes back in fourth quarter, but slightly different. The students are working in pairs or threes with one of our laptops with the software on it. And what's great about this, what's really ingenious, is what Tim touched on at the beginning, which is the students are monitoring their own progress and are able to work at the rate at which they and their partner are most comfortable. The other thing that's amazing about this that blows a lot of people's minds is they are banging down the doors to be in her classroom. So it's every spare minute of the day for some kids once they get this bug, right? So it's not just the 45 minutes of science class, it's can I come in at break? Can I come in after school for an hour and a half or 2 hours while you're, the team is practicing? Can I come in before the day starts? Can I come in during lunch? And it's exciting to see that because it's exciting to see our students passionate about something that's really productive and is really growing their ability to do good work. The other piece I like is I like that things like robotics and computer programming are iterative. So it's like writing. It's like the writing process. You do a draft. If it doesn't work, then you revise it. If it still doesn't work, you revise it again. Except that unlike the writing process, feedback is instant when you're doing robots and when you're doing computer programs. So it's not the question which you sometimes tire of as a teacher, which is my work good? It's, does it work? Does the program do what you said what you want it to do? Does the robot go and get the thing that you want it to get? That's a lot better because the value is in the activity, not in the teacher's opinion of your work, right? And I really appreciate that because I'm not always going to be the child's teacher. They don't need to derive their self-worth from my judgment of them. They need to derive their self-worth from their ability to do productive things. And that's what this lends itself to. So a couple of things we're talking about doing in 8th grade science. We use, and I'll show you in a second on the computer, the programming environment that LEGO encourages everybody to enter the field with, which is a really nice sort of drag and drop blocks and click them together, kind of like Legos. And if you click them together in the right order, then the robot will do the things in that order. There's no having to learn syntax. If you ever program BASIC or anything like that, you don't have to memorize anything. You find the category of block, you drag the block, you drop the block, the robot does things. And you can do quite a bit with that. We've been working in the last week or so in 5th and 6th grade robotics on using switches and loops. So if-then statements and if-else statements as well. But we do it graphically, not if and then a bunch of garbled stuff, then. I'll show you in a second what one looks like. But basically you tell the robot, if your color sensor detects the color black, do this. If your color sensor detects the color red, do this. And do this is usually move forward at 50% power into the motor or stop the motor altogether and turn right. But what I was getting to was there are other languages that will program these same robots that are more powerful, that also involve using syntax. And so we want to get students exposed to those as well. And so we're talking about piloting that this spring with some of our students who are pressing us in terms of their ability to program the way that we have everyone program, and then possibly growing into the full 4th quarter as everybody gets the opportunity to learn to program the robot in a language that requires them to use syntax rather than dragging and dropping blocks. So in the future, going forward, outside of middle school, we're in the process of revising. So there has been in the past a robotics class in the upper school, but it's inconsistently offered because we have limited faculty capacity to do so. We have a physics faculty member who also coaches track and field, who also coaches cross country, who teaches, I think this year, 5 sections of physics. And so asking him to teach a robotics class is maybe a bridge too far. So we're trying to figure out how we can get an upper school robotics class offered more consistently, and also trying to think about how we can grow it into something that builds on the work that's done in middle school. Because right now, after 8th grade, your only opportunities for programming in the upper school, and this is a school project and it's something we recognize, but your only programming opportunities in the upper school are this robotics class when it's offered, and applied calculus with Mr. Sabri, where they model things using Python. The robotics class we're talking about offering would also include building the more advanced robot that the first tech challenge offers. There's grant funding available for that we would seek, and there's another level of competition, and so we're trying to build it as a class and as a continuation of the program that we run right now after school and middle school. And that's hopefully, kicking off in the next year or two. We're, as a science department, trying to sort out personnel and how to make that happen as quickly as we can. That's really the lay of the robotics land. What I wanted to share with you next is just what it looks like when you program one of these things. But before I do that, do you have any questions about the lay of the robotics land on the North Campus? Okay. So the folks at MIT have partnered in their media lab with Lego, and they've developed this way to program that, again, involves just clicking blocks of different types together, and then they make things happen. And so the first version of this was something called Scratch, which I've talked about, which we use with our 5th graders, which I think our 4th graders get a taste of during Hour of Code. And again, it doesn't require children to memorize anything. They just have to find the right category of block and know what to do with it. The same thing happens when we program our robots for competition in the EV3 programming environment. So the robots are called Lego Mindstorm. The generation of robot that we had been using was the Mindstorm NXT. And last year, Lego released this new type of robot called the EV3. But the components are the same. Basically, there's what we call a brick. The brick is connected by cables to motors, which move the robot. You attach wheels to the motors or handles to the motors, and they go. And then there are sensors, right? Those also attach to the brick. The brick's the brain of the robot. You write your program for the robot, and we can pass these around. Please, though, be gentle with them, because these are competition robots.
I know.
That's fine.
We write the programs on a laptop, then we connect the robot to the laptop with a USB cord, just like you can find at Home Depot, and then we upload the program, or as they say, download the program, to the robot through the cord, separate the robot from the cord, and then find the program on the brick and run it. All these robots, I think, have programs saved on them, but I'll show you just sort of what it looks like when you do it. This is the programming environment. And so the gist of it is, you have different categories of block down here. You have movement blocks, you have flow control blocks, you have also sensor blocks, data operations blocks, advanced blocks, and then you can make your own blocks. Most of our work are, well, they're action blocks. Most of our work is with the action blocks. We're telling the robot where to move, how far, and how fast. Or we're telling it where to move by telling it how far to go and how fast. We're starting to use the flow control blocks, which allow us to use the sensors to tell the robot what to do when it encounters something. But the gist of it is, this is the beginning of a program. I choose a move block that includes steering. I drag it, I drop it. It clicks to the next block, so right now the robot's going to start reading here. This will be the first thing it does. If I attach another block on the other side of, or to the right of that, now it'll read this block, then it'll do what this block says. The blocks tell us, where the motors are connected on the robot. If you look at the brick, you can see there are numbered ports on the robot. So this information that we put in this block is going to be transmitted through the cables from the through the brick, out those ports to the motors or sensors that they're attached to. And then, because I've chosen to move steering, I can tell the robot to do a few things. If I change the number under the arrow, well, first off, I can tell the motor just to be on. I can tell it to be on for a certain number of seconds. I can tell the motor to be on for a certain number of degrees. Every 360 degrees is the rotation of the wheel. Or I can tell the robot to be on for a certain number of the motor to be on for a certain number of rotations of the wheel. We usually, most of our students program on for rotations, and then they specify a certain number of rotations to get the robot to go a certain distance. Sometimes we encourage the students, okay, why don't you take a piece of string and find out the circumference of the wheel, and then you know how far you're traveling every rotation. Then if you wanted to measure the distance between base and where you want the robot to go, you could do a better job of estimating how many rotations you want to program it. You can steer it by changing this number or using this slider. So if you use a negative number, just like in the Cartesian coordinate plane, negative numbers drag you to the left, positive numbers will take you to the right. You can have the robot turn, basically all the way around if you want to. Or you can just have it go forward. You specify the amount of power you want going into the motors. And so this one right now is going to be given 50% of the possible power that it can be given. And then you tell it how many rotations to travel. So let's do 25 rotations, which is a nice little distance. That would be the first thing that this robot would do. Is it would go forward at 50% power for 25 rotations. So I would take the robot and I would plug my USB cord into it, plug it into my laptop. It takes a second sometimes, and you got to turn the robot on to get the computer to recognize that there's actually a robot plugged into it. And if something goes wrong, I'm sorry, it may take a second. The brick is actually powered by firmware that's based on the Linux operating system, which is freely available. It's super nerdy. It's great stuff. But it may take a little while. So that's the gist of programming. There we go. Now we're live. And of course, my laptop, it does have the driver software. Once it knows that it's connected to a robot, this part of the screen will come alive, and it'll say, oh, I'm connected to a brick. And then I'll have the option of pressing that arrow right there, and it'll ship this program through this cable to the brain of the robot. Then I unplug the robot, and I find the program in the menus on the brick, and then it runs. So the robot game becomes, let me see if I can tell where this is happening. It's already so, okay. Anyway, we won't do that. I'll make the robot run one of the programs that kids have on the robot as long as they have them. Oh no, it did. It didn't recognize it, doesn't. Of course you did. There we go. Right, it was, not aware. Now it's aware. Let's actually, let's see what they've got on here. Update the programmable bricks firmware. I'm not going to do a firmware update in front of you all. That would be boring. Okay, let's see what we got here. So this is a lovely. Stop that. Let's do that again, but let's put the robot down. Here we go. Yeah, these robots are a little forward. That's a program that's included with the brick itself. This robot we can see if it has something on it. And it may take a second for it to boot up. We don't encourage the students to keep their programs on the brick because you lose your programs that way, so we store them on jump drives. Every team's got its own little jump drive. And we're like the government when it's time to go to competition. There's multiple jump drives. There's a version in the cloud. There are so many redundancies. And we send an advanced team to the competition location with all our materials. We've gotten really good at it. All right, here we go. Let's see. They just called this program, which is, I don't know how useful that is. Let's see. Pardon me if the robot bumps into you. Oh no. Okay, that was programmed. Look, I think this program is, yeah. This program is for opening doors, the one that you saw at the very beginning. So the way the field is oriented this year, base is in a corner. If you go, I would say, to your left from base, the door is there. And so that program is just go out, knock the door down, push it, and then back up to base. So that's their program for opening doors. I think that's the whole 9 yards. So you've seen the robots, you have heard about the competition in the 8th grade. Are there any questions on the basis of that? No? Super, well thanks for coming out this morning, we're glad to have you.
Yes, let's see, we have a kindergartner.
Yeah.
By the time she gets to the 5th grade, what are you gonna have?
Yeah, so,
Awesome.
I mean, we'll probably still have these in some version. They took them, what did it
I'm
take them,
just
like
teasing
7 years to update their, I mean, I think they try to do it once a decade. So, yeah, maybe something exciting. There's a lot of other stuff I'm glad to stay and talk with you about afterwards that we're trying to, we've got a 3D printer now in the middle school. We, again, are trying to go one-to-one. We're trying to also do some stuff with electronics. That's part of the Makers Workshop in the spring. We've got these really lovely electronics components that are magnetic that click together to one of those. So you can make something that's a fully functioning electronic device, but you don't have to do soldering, and you don't have to fidget with trying to connect wires to terminals. You just connect the magnets. And it's nice for younger middle school students because there's also no worry about, I mean, if it clicks together, it was meant to click together. Magnets make it nice for us for that reason. So, that's it. Super. Thank you.